Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk about Fear the Walking Dead and how it connects to the Rick Grimes movies. Now, we will not go deep into the details of the spoiler, but I gotta say that this would qualify as a spoiler, absolutely, in my opinion. So if you don't want to be spoiled by anything whatsoever, you should probably not watch this. Now, we don't normally cover spoilers. I absolutely hate them, can't stand them. However, there's a few things I know, and for those wanting to discuss Fear the Walking Dead a little early before it premieres, I think Season 5 starts June 2nd. So for those who want to discuss it before it comes back on, let's dive into this. For those who don't, you better peace out now. Alright, so in Fear the Walking Dead, and it will be the premiere episode, there's going to be a scene with Athena, and it's going to relate to the airplane that we see in the teaser right here, or the promo image. I know there's a couple of things that are shown, the plane in the promo image, and as well as in one of the trailers, you can see the plane, and you can see this walker in a black armor setup. I can't seem to find the clip, but I know there's one in one of the previous trailers or promos that shows just a couple seconds from behind of the walker in black armor. Now, no, it's not going to be a mutant radioactive walker. I know that theory's been floating around out there, but it's just going to be a walker. I guess it's somebody from a certain community that just got killed in this plane crash and they turned into a normal walker, from my understanding. In the official trailer, we do see a few shots of signs saying danger, keep out, radioactive, and then we see one with Alicia falling on a sign that says radioactive. We see somebody in gear as if they're in a radioactive area. It appears the plane crashes in the radioactive location where Morgan and our gang just may have discovered, and they're trying to help maybe possibly these people there. Again, I have some of the information, but I personally don't dive in too deep for spoilers to make videos. I tend to just try my best to normally avoid them. I'm not all that thrilled with Fear the Walking Dead, so I hear some things. I'm trying to get a little more curious to see if it's something I want to watch. I'm definitely going to give the first episode a look, but it does appear that this radioactive material will visually give some of our walkers some gross and distinctive looks, and I think that's a plus. Anything visual that kind of changes it up, makes it a little bit different. Again, radioactive, you got to be a little touchy because you don't want to break that realism, but as far as having an area that was radioactive, meaning if the walkers are contaminated, you can't just run up to them and stab them in the face, because then you would get contaminated. So it has to be an equal balance with a little bit of realism, but still grounded in that world and still fun and interesting. So as far as zombies getting a unique look to them because they're coming from a radioactive area, I think that's a great idea. Kind of ironic. I'm watching the Chernobyl show on HBO, which is fantastic, to be honest. And the one scene, they describe what radioactive contamination does, and it kind of makes your insides decompose. Your body decomposes while you're still alive, and it's unimaginable pain, and it's kind of ironic thinking about a zombie decomposing because of radioactive contamination. Anyway, how does that connect to the Rick movies? Well, Athena is going to find a map, and they will show the 3-circle symbol from Jadis's episode and from the helicopter that picked up Rick Grimes. This will connect the plane to the helicopter, and this will connect the walker who died, or I should say the person in the black armor who died and who is now a walker in black armor. This will connect that community, which will still be a mystery at this point. It's just kind of like a teaser cliffhanger. We will be getting more throughout the season because obviously Athena will come into contact. She will find a map, and then she'll come into contact with possibly somebody from this group. Now, I think it's interesting how it's an airplane and not a helicopter. I think this would make more sense considering I think there are about 1,000 rough estimates looking at the map They're about 1,000 miles away from where Rick was picked up with a helicopter. Just doing some quick Google search for some information. It looks like helicopters can range, depending if they're private or whatever, depending on their fuel, the amount of fuel that they have. They can travel anywhere from 250 miles to about 400 miles, give or take. And again, rough estimate, but a small plane like this seen in the promo image can travel around 1,500 miles. And again, these are just estimates based on what I was able to look up as far as fuel size without having to stop and refuel. If they have locations where they can stop and refuel, then yes, this expands the search greatly, but it makes more sense if we're just going by one refuel. Now that would mean that the location is closer. Since they're in a helicopter, the location is closer to our Walking Dead environment, up in Virginia, and a little farther away than Fear the Walking Dead. This will shrink the world, and I believe that's something they did announce in their productions, but it will shrink the world and make it a little more tight and have a little more connective tissue, because this is in fact the same group that has Rick Grimes. Now, before we get too excited, this I feel is going to be a flimsy connection, kind of put in there just to get the fan base hyped and riled with, theories and discussions and go on social media, because they haven't even started with the Rick movies yet. There's going to be 3 movies unless they make changes, so it doesn't look like, and there was a time skip of years on the main show, so it doesn't look like at all there's going to be any revelation. We find out what happened to Rick. We might get bits and pieces, details, some hints, and I think that's a good idea for them as far as bringing more people over to watch the show who are going to be interested in what's going on with Rick, because then they can find out maybe a little bit more about the community before the Rick movies come out. And it's also a good way to pull some people who are only watching Fear the Walking Dead over to the Rick Grimes movies. So as far as a way to promote it within its own program, I think that's a good idea. I'm a little worried about how they're building these connections, just simply because I'm kind of falling out of interest with Fear the Walking Dead. We will discuss the first few episodes. If it doesn't really improve, it's not my cup of tea, we might cut the discussions. I'm not sure yet. But you guys leave your thoughts and opinions down below on how do you think this connection is going to play out. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I personally think it's only going to be little bits of teases with tiny nuggets of information that lead to more questions anyhow, because there's just not enough here yet. There's not enough in the main program, which is the Rick show. There's not enough there. They're not going to give us all the information in, outside of the main show, because then what would be the interest in watching the main show and watching everything revealed and everything come to light if they're going to spoil everything in the side shows, especially Fear the Walking Dead. So I think this is just connective tissue, not a lot of substance though. And I'm not trying to be negative before we even see it. I'm simply saying not a lot of substance and a little bit flimsy, simply based on the fact that they can't give us that information, because then we wouldn't have anything revealed for the Rick movies. Whatever they give us, however it plays out, we know she's going to find some type of map. We know she's going to run into somebody from those communities that will interact with her, and it will play out to some extent throughout season 5, or at least the first half. But they can't go too far into it, simply because it would be content they're taking away from the movies, and it wouldn't fit timeline-wise, because they're not going to reveal what happens to Rick in Fear the Walking Dead. They're just not. That is why I say it's going to be light on the substance and just give us a little bit of hints. There is still that, if I think about it as a positive possibility, and this is what does excite me, there's definitely possibilities to turn this group or this organization into something bigger that they can expand within the world of The Walking Dead. And this group would have to be pretty exciting to be able to be in the main show, and then now cameoed in Fear the Walking Dead, which is the spinoff, or the companion show that turned into a spin-off, and then obviously would be the main focus in the Rick movies. And since it's a huge time skip, this community would have to play heavy influence in, at the very least, one entire movie, maybe even 2 entire movies. Because keep in mind, if he's at a distance away and this community gets destroyed as he's leaving, or if he does escape or flee, he's going to have to travel. And there's going to be different types of obstacles that Rick is going to have to overcome just getting back home, if that is his plan. So don't expect it to be like, okay, he escapes now, so we expect him back on the main show. That's just not how it's going to be. If he escapes, he's still going to have to make that journey, that travel. And obviously, they got to have some type of story that would explain why he hasn't came back home immediately. And again, I think a big part of that has to do with the obstacles in his way. So go ahead, put those thoughts and opinions down below. I'm done talking. It's your turn.